Good morning, everybody. I'm Chris Brackett, LandLife podcast right now, episode 2 coming at you. Why do you go into the woods to get close to critters, to get close to whitetails? Well, because they won't let you pet them. I mean, that's the only reason we hunt them. I tell everyone that I meet that says, well, I want to get deeper into the land life. I want to know how to get closer to whitetails. I want to figure out these big bucks, and I want to, have those experiences. They all have checklists of watching 2 bucks fight, or watching a buck do a scrape, or, watching all these deer come to a beautiful food plot that they put in with their own 2 hands and their buddies and their kids, and they grew it. And then the deer come and they play in the clover, and they play in the turnips and radishes, and they walk through the standing corn, and then being able to find their sheds. I mean, that truly to me is the land life. Not everybody hunts, but everybody enjoys being out in nature, being one with God's creation. And that's literally why we created this. I've had the brand Fear No Evil and Arrow Affliction. You've watched me on the Outdoor Channel. You've heard about my crazy antics and my characters that I've led my whole life doing outdoor television. And now we get to have a little one-on-one where I help teach people what I've learned over the years, where I've been, some of the subjects of that I've written down here on my phone that we're going to talk about today. And I hope some of them help you. I hope some of them inspire you, some of the stories, some of the information. I also want to tell you, you're not alone in this world. Men, we silently suffer, and this is a new safe place in 2023. This is where you can reach out to me, and I can help you through the gospel, through just being a man, knowing that you have to take care of your family, and that you have to be able to make right decisions, and that God will honor those sacrifices that you make by just hitting your knees, praying to him. Even before this podcast, I was praying, sitting here, because this is really scary for me. I'm putting myself out there to the world to be, persecuted and have people be able to say whatever they want, because in 2023, you get to hide behind a computer screen and you don't really make yourself out, put yourself out there. But it's a little scary. Everything new is a little scary. TV was cool because I could film a couple of these, put it with a story, hire a producer, tell them my vision for what it was. And we put it out to the world. We bought the time, and then we put it out there, and then sold the airtime, commercials, to sponsors. They paid, we funded it. I paid for the production. I came up with the stuff in my mind and how the storyline was going to go. And I paid different producers over the years to do it. And, that was one crazy season of my life that I did for 10 to 20 years. I love to tell you guys about that. But I think what we're all really wanting to talk about today, it is the 3rd week of October. It is in this October lull, or does the October lull even exist? You hear a lot of differences between, does the October lull exist? What are the deer doing right now, Chris? Have the aliens really stole all the deer? It feels like that. It feels like that on acorn years. It feels like that when you get the wet precipitation in October, and the farmers can't get the crop out of the field. It feels like the aliens have stole all the whitetails. So I'm just going to go into it. If you don't know who I am, my name is Chris Brackett. This is LandLife Podcast. I just want to get into why you're really here before you tune out. The first couple minutes. These are going to be 30 minutes long. That's the target, because I'm going to try to do these daily. We're going to get better and better at these, and I'm going to edit them and upload them. And you guys going to get the most up-to-date deer season reports. Everybody likes to say, oh, here you go. Let's go to Timmy right now for the rut report. Now, this is just what's happening in Illinois. This is just what my perception is. And this is, if you trust my whitetail knowledge, you're going to be able to learn a little bit, but you're going to have to trust me. You're going to have to open your mind up a little bit. Okay? Open your mind up a little bit. First topic. Yesterday, I was driving around with a friend. We were going to put up a 360 blind. That's a great location. that I'm going to tell you about in a second on that. But while we're driving by, out in the soybean field, there is a doe walking in circles, eyes wide open, panting, really labored, kind of hooves up and down. Has EHD hit Illinois? That's the question right now. That is the question that kept me up last night is, has EHD hit the Midwest? I know it's hit Missouri. I've seen reports in Missouri. I've seen reports in Iowa, but I haven't really heard about it hitting Illinois yet. And the signs I saw yesterday on this doe in the middle of the field with no fawns, well, something was wrong with her. Did she get hit by a car? She was by two very, very populated roads, streets, highways. Did she get hit by a car, just a little messed up? Was she just kind of out of her mind a little bit? But she was in the middle of the field at 12 in the afternoon walking in circles. If you don't know anything about EHD, I'm not going to try to butcher the pronunciation, but it's from a midge fly, a little midge bug. The midge essentially lays its eggs in the mud on the banks of creeks, water puddles, water holes, stagnant water, the fluctuation of inches or feet, depending on how much rain somebody gets. Normally you find it in a drought. These bugs are laid in on the edges of the mud water. And then they hatch depending on what that water level is and then how much drought you have. If you have a lot of water, sometimes that's bad because with any up is going to come down. So you've got this wet stuff all over. If the midges are out there, they lay their eggs, the water drops, the midge flies hatch by the, thousands, millions, 100,000s. And then they go and they bite the bug, they bite the deer, they bite us. They don't affect us. I'm not going to get into all the crazy stuff about cattle. All we give a crap about is the deer anyway. So it bites the deer on their faces, in their eyes, on their velvet antlers. Right now, you're not looking at the big bachelor groups being together. So hopefully, if it is here, it doesn't take all the bucks. Be watching for fawns without their mother. The first sign to me of EHD hitting an area is going to be fawns running around completely lost without their mother. Now, this happens when they're button heads and the rut starts kicking off. The mothers will kick the little guys away. The bucks will kick the little guys away to let that mother breed and then have fawns the next year. Now, that really isn't happening yet. So in October, when you see fawns without their mother and you see them really lost and you don't see a lot of mature does, next thing you know, you're going to start smelling some dead. You're going to start seeing some buzzards. Just keep your eye open. But the question is, have you seen signs of EHD or found deer that are dead? Look at their hooves. Look at their hooves. If they've got hoof rot, that's a telltale sign that it is EHD in your area. That's about the only way I know to tell after a deer is dead is if you find it and the coyotes haven't eaten it, the buzzards haven't eaten it, and none of the scavenging animals have eaten that deer. Normally there's something wrong. Normally it's EHD. I'd tell you to call your DNR. I'd tell you to do whatever. If it was me, I'd just document it myself and have that information for myself. And if you hear of other things, then you can report it. That's up to you. I'm not telling you to do anything because I don't really know what's going on. You can't really trust the government when it comes to the EHD or the CWD or any of that information. We're not going there today. We're going to move on. But has EHD hit the Midwest? I want to hear about it. Go to our Facebook, go to our Instagram. You can look up Chris Brackett's LandLife. That's Chris Brackett, 2 T's, LandLife, one word. Check out our Facebook, follow us, Instagram. Tell us what you're seeing out there in the EHD world. Now, what is the whitetail report for 2023 in the information that I can tell you? Well, we had a really horrible growing year. I mean, you're talking about young deer like this, 1.5 years old, 2 years old. This is on my personal farm. I mean, this is what you want to see at 2 years old. This is what you want to see at 1.5 years old on any farm really in America. They rub on pines there. at my farm a lot. I've got some old pines, and they'll rub on that. They'll get really black and sticky. That's just dirt and pine tar, like on a bat. This deer popped up out of nowhere, found a shed in some standing beans. He's pretty incredible. But then when we started putting cameras out and getting reports of, this really dry crop, really dry year, corn, beans, everything. When you start off a year like that, normally I don't worry about it too much. I'm an aged guy. I want to kill 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old deer. So I don't really worry about the antlers, but I can tell you that when the velvet pictures in July started rolling in, I was very disheartened to watch these animals that you develop a relationship with, that you're rooting for to have their greatest growth of their lives at 5 and 6 years old, that they just didn't reach their potential. Like, I have so many deer that are 8-pointers and 9-pointers, and they're thick and they're heavy and they're massy deer, but they're not going to score what they would have if we had a really good year. Now, I'm not going to get really into that. I'm not into growing deer in a pen. I don't have all the research behind it, but I do know that there are certain years that are incredible for antler growth. This year is just not one. Don Higgins was talking about it with Terry on the old Chasing Giants podcast that I know a lot of people listen to for deer information. And I literally told my buddy Royce, I'm like, they don't really know yet. And this was back in June. Maybe they were running cameras. Maybe they were studying deer that they have in fences or pens or something that they have just to study. Or maybe they, I don't really know how they knew. But when I hit July and I watched these deer just not finish out, man, it was disheartening, to say the least, that these deer just didn't finish out with all the points that they should have. And that's okay. I mean, these are still 150-inch world-class whitetails that are 5, 6 years old, but they're not going to hit that 180. I've got a particular deer right now that started out on my personal farm that at a year and a half old, he threw an extra point. And he threw an extra point right here, just these 2 little nubbins, but I knew that antler was different. I never have found any of his sheds, but I've watched that deer grow up. He is now 5.5 years old. I call him 8 by. He's a beautiful deer. I post pictures of him a lot on my Instagram, my Facebook. He's a beautiful deer, but I knew he was special, and that was one of the deer that was unique. And that gets us into kind of, how do you name them? What do you name them? The only reason that we really name deer, or people in the outdoor world that's on social media or television, or the only reason we ever named a deer was because if you had 5 8-pointers on one farm and you were hunting with your friends and you were trying to keep track of these deer, it would be like, well, which deer did you see? And be like, well, I saw a big 8-pointer. Okay. You saw a big 8-pointer. All right. Well, which one was it? I don't know. The big 8. Now all of a sudden he's got a name. Well, he's the 8 with the kicker. And then if you're trying to have fun in the world, if you're trying to have fun with your life, because this world we live in isn't fun. It's not meant to be happy. You find joy in the gospel. You find joy in Jesus' blood that he shed for us, knowing that we're going to go to heaven. And, but you have to give your life to Christ before you just go into heaven. But that's a whole nother topic. This is deer, right? But that's how you got into naming whitetails. I've named deer everything from Method Man to the Terminator to Penguin to Big Chungus. This is Big Chungus. This is a deer we're after this year. Big Chungus is big, right? Big Chungus is incredible. He is a world-class whitetail. He doesn't live on us, but I'm going to bet that he's going to show up in November or December. He's a late season deer that gets to come hang out on the food plots. One thing we're always going to talk about, but that's Big Chungus. And, you come up with fun names. Why? Because it's fun. You people that take it serious, and the guys out west and guys that don't own farms, or they're just taking it too serious. Listen, I'm the first one to tell you that I get mad at little stupid stuff. I mean, I was essentially second generation into the outdoor world. And in some things, I was one of the first people to do a lot of slow-mo arrow shooting and whatever in outdoor television. Now, any joker with a phone or a camera thinks they're Marty Stauffer. They probably don't even know who Marty Stauffer is. Wild America, that we watched as kids in black and white and then in color, and watched them document whitetail footage and bears and critters all over. National Geographic stuff, man. And I get mad at things, but one thing I will never get upset about is naming a deer, being descriptive in the terms that I use to say, well, that's the 8 with the kicker. And as we get into those deer, and watching them grow through July on trail cameras and not having a big growth year, it's a big deal. But I want to implore you to really, look into the age structure on your farm. Find out who your neighbors are. Are they passing all the 4-year-olds? If you have neighbors that you're blessed enough that are passing 4-year-old whitetail deer, you really owe it to yourself to find out, number one. Number two, to really look into and find it in your heart to let that 4-year-old go. I know there's a lot of people that just went, I'm never letting a 4-year-old go. How can you let 150, 160, 130, 140, whatever inch deer go at 3 years old or 4 years old? The average mega giant whitetail on the planet is a 4-year-old whitetail. It's when they really explode. That step between 4 and 5 and having that deer explode at 5 is such an incredible jump that if you see it one time, it'll blow your mind. And then watching that deer from 5 to 6 will just really open your eyes, and the body size and just the challenge with being able to go after a big giant deer. And I think other podcasts have talked about this, the word giant, the word mega, the word big, buck. They're all in the eye of the beholder, but let's be honest. Between a 4-year-old and a 5-year-old and a 6-year-old, those things just are so incredible in what a whitetail will do when left alone. Just left alone. Nothing fancy. Just leave them alone. Just give them a nice place to hang out and do deer stuff, and leave them alone. Hunt them on the edges. Let them do their thing. And they will probably 40% of the time, I know it's not very big odds, but 40% of the time they will be able to evade predators. One more year, one more birthday. How do you get a deer to be big? Just one more birthday. Just think of it that way. One more birthday. Well, if I don't shoot them, the neighbor will. Well, that might be true. But if you have your own property and you've done what I've done, you start curbing the percentages on them leaving to go to the neighbors, or knowing where the habitat is that they can evade predators and they can still do their thing. Because at the end of the day, remember that Chris Brackett told you on LandLife podcast that deer just want to do deer stuff. We get in their way. Cars get in their way. They just want to do deer stuff. And at the root of it, I want to watch them do deer stuff. How can I let them do deer stuff without them smelling me, smelling my footprints, seeing my brand new stand with this railing that's, got this cover on it that smells like China factory that I'm putting into their environment? I'm not leaving them alone to do deer stuff. And at the end of the day, deer just want to do deer stuff. I know it sounds redundant, it sounds silly, but if you think about invading your property, or you as a person invading the property, it's not always just walking on the property. Sometimes it's a matter of letting your scent drift into the property. How safe does that animal feel with you walking on the property, with you driving by and your scent blowing into the property? How thick are those woods? Are they going to bump 30 yards? Will they even get out of their bed that they're laying in during the day? Or do they move 300 yards and go onto the neighbors and run like crazy. I've seen properties that where if you just step foot on that property, those deer, you don't even have to stop the car. You just drive the car by and those deer will bump out of this wood lot and there'll be 3 wood lots over because they feel the pressure of humans or coyotes, or they just don't feel secure on that property. Yesterday, I was driving around in a tractor on my property. Why? Number one, we were installing a blind on this other property that's nearby, and I decided to go move some trail cameras to scrapes, which I wanted to talk about today and where I would put trail cameras. So right now I'm putting trail cameras on scrapes, whether I make them or they're already there. Right now, for the next 2 weeks, you're going to want every camera you have, one on a food source where they're coming out into your food plot or coming out of a corner or wherever you want. Make sure you're always moving those cameras every couple of weeks, because those deer will pick up on the human scent. They will pick up on the little bit of infrared, the little bit of sound from these trail cameras. Just move them, face them in different directions. My one buddy always says that just do what Chris does. I put the camera up, they take some pictures, and then he walks out there and flips it completely the other direction, and all of a sudden there's all kinds of deer. Well, those deer kind of know where that infrared is. I don't know why, but they're deer. They live in this environment. It's like if somebody put a listening device or a camera in the middle of my living room, I would know. I'd walk around it. And so I can't tell you really why. I'm not going to get into that today, but man, just go out there and move that to a different tree at a different angle and a different location, and you're going to be surprised how many more deer you're going to pick up, especially with these cell cams. Well, yesterday I drove into the farm and I rode around. I got a 75 C case tractor, so it's a big boy. It's a full sizer. Rather than my compact tractors I've had before. So you're sitting way up, driving on the roads. I pull into my farm, like, okay, I'm going to drive down here in the CRP. I'm going to go set these cameras up on the edge of this soybeans that just has a little bit of green beans on this south edge by this big blue and switchgrass on this edge. And I found a couple scrapes. So I took the forks and I kind of, there was some overhanging limbs that there was already a big deer at. I actually, on day one of this season that I hunted was October 5th. I shot at a 180-inch deer. Packed a stand-in, old style, kind of Andre Duquesne style, 2 hang-on sticks. And a lone wolf. I got up about 5 or 6 feet, or probably closer to 8 feet. It was over my head. And I just tucked this one little spot. I just cut out a little hole overlooking this beans. I saw 15 bucks that day, and the 15th buck was this giant monster 12, 14-inch brow tine deer, and was way bigger when I saw him in person. He was the 15th deer to come out, and he was hitting a scrape, and I shot at him. He was definitely in range, and I didn't hold very far back. I normally aim for the back of the lungs and liver, so the middle of the deer doesn't really duck the front end. And this time I decided, his head's in that scrape, making a scrape right there in front of me, broadside, little bit quartered, and I'm gonna hold it tight to that shoulder. And when I let that arrow go, man, I don't know if it was the fact that those bucks were out there that he freaked out so bad, but he hit the ground and turned and that head went down and he turned and it went right where his vitals were. And if I'd have aimed back, that middle of that deer doesn't duck as much. And I would have put it through the liver. I'd have had to wait 6 hours. The coyotes would have ate it. I didn't want a repeat of last year where I shot Handy and I hit him one lung and liver back and I left him 6 hours and I couldn't find him that night. And I found him the next morning and the coyotes had eaten him. So I went back to that scrape. Now this is 2 weeks later and I went back to that scrape, but this time I didn't enter as a hunter because he never smelled me. He never saw me. He just knew something was up and he hasn't been back to that area, which means he's down on the creek. He's going out the other side to these fields. He'll be back soon. He's just not moving very far because we're in 60-degree weather. So I went back to the scrape, and this is just kind of one of my tricks is I don't mind invading any of my farms, or there's no area that's sacred to me if the conditions are right. I had high winds yesterday, really weird high winds. I had a tractor, not a side-by-side, not a four-wheeler, not on my feet walking across and tainting my farm with every scent molecule of my arms and skin and feet and boots and sprayed down with stuff. I wasn't touching anything. I'm a farmer mowing the edges of CRP. Like, this is to the deer laying there. Oh, there's just the tractor again coming to mow the lanes and upkeep the edges of the field. And so anytime that I need to invade an area that I have to go reset cameras or do whatever, now this isn't every day, but I will get on my tractor and I will creep that tractor through and I will keep it running and jump off real quick and reset the camera. I will make a mock scrape if I need. I will take the forks, like, because I got forks because I was moving the blind. I will take those and I will scrape that ground just back and forth enough to bring fresh dirt up underneath where an already, overhanging branch is. I will do whatever it takes to not put my foot on the ground and just have diesel and grease from the bucket and all the joints and just tractor smells going through that CRP. I jumped two giants. I jumped one that was 6-7 years old. He's a big deer. He's got baseball bats for beams and he's a forked deer. And I came around this corner by this pond and there he is laying. He was laying in a couple locusts on the edge and he was just overlooking this little patch. And I didn't jump one doe in an hour of driving around through the CRP and on the edges. And when I say CRP, I'm talking about native grasses, big blue, little blue, and then normally it has weeds in there like mare's tail and goldenrod and this nice little mixture of native grasses and then all these weeds. And these deer are out sunning themselves. It's cool enough for them to be close to that ground. It's just cool enough at the 60 degrees that they're out there soaking up that sun. And this was one big buck. As soon as I turned the corner, there he was, and he's sitting right there on the edge. And then I went up around the corner. I changed the trail camera. I went down there. I made a little scrape. I kept going down through, and I went past. And I never really stopped or turned off the tractor or changed direction and did a bunch of weird stuff. I just knew my path where I was going, this slow and methodical, going through the farm, like a farmer would do, going around the edge. And I went and I hit both my plots. I moved the cameras around. I checked everything out, checked a couple stands. I got everything prepared, essentially preparing for battle, trying not to mess up the area. And if I do mess up the area, I'm not a hunter. I'm the farmer on a tractor. And they will look at you completely different, especially in Illinois, Iowa, Wisconsin. They see tractors, or at least hear them, every single day. And that diesel fuel is one of the best cover scents on the planet Earth. I will promise you that. And with that said, I just kind of kept my little route where I was going to go. And I went to this lower field and I knew this stand was there. And I went to check this camera and I moved it over and I left the tractor run. I got off. I walked 5 feet. I moved it real quick. I jumped back on the tractor and I went to just keep going on my path. And I thought, I need to go ahead and drive these tire tracks to that back little wood lot where those deer come out of that creek, where they come in front on the west side of this tree stand. So they come up headed to food. Let me go ahead and create 2 of these little 2 tracks. And most of you would be like, well, I don't want to invade. Now think about that. Think about what I'm doing. I'm on a tractor that mows the grass around the farm. I'm going to be in and out of there and I'm never going to stop moving. The tires are about as wide as my chest. And I'm going to be creating 2 paths that out of everywhere where this 5-foot tall grass is, that if I just drive those tractor tires, those 2 tracks, all the way from where I know they come out to me, I don't have to mow anything, but I'm pushing them down, pushing these 2 trails down from there to there. And this is something that I've just learned over the years. And a lot of people are like, well, duh, that's common sense. And I'm like, to you, sir or ma'am, I don't care. if that's how you feel about the information I'm telling you, I'm not acting like I invented it. I'm just using common sense and going, hey, here's a reminder. I know you've probably been at a bunch of ball games and soccer games. Do you remember like 3 years ago, Jimmy? Remember when you drove that tractor and that side-by-side on that rainy day back and forth, and then those deer used that path all year? This is just a reminder. Just a reminder of tactics that other people use, people that hunt every day and that refresh their clients. Remember when we did this? Remember that this is your reminder. So get on the tractor. Today it's raining. Go drive your side-by-side down through there and make them a little trail. You don't have to get off of it. Don't step foot on the ground. Just take the tractor, what they're used to, go drive you a path and get out of there. I don't care if you're dropping somebody off to hunt. You drive around and you're being a farmer. Go be a farmer. Fix what you need to fix. Muddy the water before the storm gets here. The end of October, the November rut, the deer are going to go crazy. It's not really like that, but you do really need to kind of go get everything set up. So if you take the tractor method, or if you take the rainy day method, slipping around doing what you have to, go do it. And this is what I did yesterday. I had just swirling crazy winds, really hot. So I drove the tractor there. But remember, in the story, I was going to go on the normal 2-track that I normally go. And I thought, well, there's that little wood line over there where those deer come out of that creek where they've been drinking. They come up and then they head up through, and I want them on this side of where my stand is and go up. So I just went ahead and kind of backed up and drove over there. And when I tell you that when I stopped that tractor and I changed that direction, all I did was I was going here and I just backed up and changed that direction. 20 yards away is laying 160-inch super magnum, giant, heavy deer that my friend Dougie across the road, he names Descendant. And I'm talking, this is 160 plus inch deer, giant fork on one side. You've seen pictures. This deer jumps up at 15 yards and I'm looking into his bed the whole time. If I just would have looked left, I would have seen him. And he had his head down. And when he jumped, his head come up and he started bounding through that CRP, kind of looking back, and he sees the tractor. And I never stopped moving because I'm just a farmer. Farmers don't really care about deer. And I just kept on my path and I kept driving. I watched him go down into the creek. And I drove that 2-track and I went around the edge of the CRP and I went all the way out and then up and out of the field. And that camera that I had just adjusted and made sure it was perfect was pointed right at that 2-track. And when I drove it and I left and I watched that deer go in, that deer ran 50 yards and dumped into the creek. I left, and I kid you not, 2 hours later, that 6.5-year-old whitetail walked out of that creek, not with the wind in his favor, with the wind at his back. He walked out of that creek on the same 2-track that I just made, and he walks that 2-track right up to where I turned around, and then he walks to go get downwind and go into where all the other does are and up to the food plots. But I kid you not, he waited 2 hours, bedded down, I'm sure, somewhere else, and then he had to come check out what the farmer did. He didn't smell where my feet got off. He could have, but I'm just a farmer. He listened to see if that tractor stopped or changed its cadence in any way. And cadence is anything that repetitive algorithm cadence. That tractor just going down through there. And the minute I changed that a little bit, he jumped. But just think of if I didn't change, how would that have all gone different? He would have stayed there. He would have got up. He'd have done his thing. But now he's used the 2-track. He knows how easy that is. And we will get a shot at this big deer in the next probably 10 days before the full moon. And it will be in that area, coming from there, leading on up to the other kind of trap positions, our traps that we've set, our setups going out to this food, up to these food plots. He will mess up there in the next 10 or 15 days. and we will get a crack at this big 6-year-old. It's what he did last year. Those go to other things that we talk about. But so yesterday was about taking that tractor around, making sure everything was right. It's a tactic that has worked for literally the last 50 plus years, using tractors to get in and out and to go set up your farm. Just go be a farmer and don't overthink it. You don't have to message and go, is it okay if everything in moderation. The farms that the farmers are always out doing stuff in their field, they don't hold the deer. But if the farmer goes in there and he mows one day, those deer normally get up that night or the next day, and they come check it out and they make sure, hey, is he coming back? Is this happening over and over? Do I need to change locations? Have I given up my cover? And so just go in there, do your thing, and get out. More damage is done by people going over and over to the same places and doing stuff rather than just going in and getting out. So that's kind of what I did yesterday. We set up a scenario where there is a big block of timber, south wind, and we left 3 acres of beans. So a lot of people ask me about food plots and whatever. The easiest way to do food plots is to pay especially in Illinois, anywhere there's grain crops like corn and beans, even sorghum in like Kansas and stuff. If you can just pay the farmer, work out a deal, especially if you're the landowner, leave 3 acres per 100 acres of deer hunting, timber, grass, land. If you have 100 acres, you're going to need 3 acres of standing beans and 3 acres of corn to really feed these deer adequately enough to keep them into dropping their antlers in and around this food source coming late in the season. You also want this to be food enough to get them through the winters, drop their antlers, and then put on that bulk and hopefully eat the rest of whatever's left. And, honestly, you're going to have turkeys there in the spring because those turkeys have fed there with the deer, eating the corn and beans anyways. And so this scenario of 3 acres, native grasses with a trail cut through them. This is that trail. I don't mind going into native grasses, and I actually really like it if I can connect food sources or bedding areas to food. If I can mow a 5-foot path with my mower on the back of my tractor, I'm going to do it every time. And then, in this scenario was clover and greens, winter wheat, clover, in one little plot. There's a little bitty pond there. And so these deer would come up to a stand that's on the greens because it's normally warmer when they're on the greens. And then they're going to walk this trail coming out of this timber with a south wind. And we put up a 360 blind right there where they come out of the clover through the native grass and then out into the 3 acres of standing crop. So many times when I talk to people, I got a buddy in Ohio, we started talking about food plots and whatever. And I said, well, you're going to need beans and corn to really do what you need to keep those deer on your property and really get them kind of conditioned. And he said, oh, we got beans and corn everywhere. I said, well, I don't think you understand what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is, do you leave properly planted beans and corn standing for just the deer, not picked stuff where they have stubble and leftovers? They're going to prefer something that's being left for them over the stuff that's being cut. And so the number one thing when somebody asks me, hey, can you help me with food plots? I'm like, well, do you have the option to be able to buy back the buyback program, that you can buy back an acre, 2, 3, whatever you think is enough for the deer, triple it. You'll always attract more deer over the years. So if you start with an acre and a half and they eat it all, go to 2, go to 3. I just start at 3. If the farmer wants to come back, if he hasn't put his combine completely away, he's welcome to pick it. You're welcome to till it under. If you're never going to harvest this crop, you can just till it under. A lot of those beans are going to keep coming back. At least you're going to give them something, even if you have to till that under and plant something later on. There's a lot of ways that I recommend just having the farmer leave or plant you a certain area and do it right. They're going to do it 10 times better than you anyways. They do it for a living. So if they're already putting down their anhydrous for corn or their nitrogen for their corn, and they're putting down their lime, whether it be pelletized or ag lime or whatever, just have the farmer leave you 3 acres. I don't care If it's in the middle of the field, that just means wherever the deer is bedding, they're going to walk all the way out to the middle of that field. If you can control the situation and you're not going to have any poaching or anybody coming in there with spotlights or harassing your deer, you can leave that standing crop anywhere in the field. Just make sure that you're not leaving the poor areas. Your goal is to have the tonnage there in what we call hard crops, right? So leave you 3 acres square. That deer is going to be, let's say on the neighbors or down in a draw, and he's going to have to walk 200 or 300 yards all the way to that crop. I guarantee you that if you leave those standing crops, and it's not too late in the season in some places to get a hold of that farmer, but that is the most cost effective and the number one thing that you can do to improve your farm, your ground, whatever it is. Pay that money, watch that result. Out of all years to do it, these farmers aren't making money this year, so this is the year to do it. Go pay them. Leave that crop up, and you will see a difference. That's your guarantee. You will see a difference in that farm, how many deer use it, how many deer know about it that have never been to that farm before, and how many antlers and just sign and things that you will enjoy more out of your hunting and taking care of the land than you will pulling the trigger. Now, breaking big update. This is what I have been wanting you to stay around for. This is the best thing that I can tell you. If you know me and follow me at all, you know that full moon is the number one thing, the reason why I have these giants sitting behind me and on this wall. Out of probably, I'm going to go out on a limb. Not even going to go probably. I'm going to say that 80% of the white-tailed deer that I have harvested, killed, put on the ground that are 5 years old and older have been within 48 hours of the night of the full moon. If the full moon is happening directly overhead on the night of the 28th of October this year, if that is the night, and the reason I say 48 hours is sometimes the news person that doesn't really care if he gets it right or not, that full moon might be at noon that day. Then it's going to be the 36 hours before that noon, that morning, right at that full moon, and the day before, that the monsters, the ghosts, that the mega giants, that the biggest bucks on your farm and in your area, that's the day they will be on their feet. So when you hear about me talk about the full moon, I'm not talking about deer in general. I'm talking about the deer that you guys want to daylight. So many questions on how you get a big buck to daylight. Science. For years, and this is what I'm talking about, science, like the best fishermen offshore, they know about the full moon. They know about chasing giants. They know about chasing megas, swordfish, big marlin, big fish. They've been following the full moon for years. You go talk to them. They know. The old timers, they know. Now, after the full moon, I don't like to hunt it. But before that full moon, 48 hours. And the reason I say 48 hours is because the red moon guide might tell you that the full moon is on the night of the 27th. It might tell you it's on the night of the 29th. It might tell you it's on the night of the 28th. The weatherman might tell you it's the night of the 28th, and it'll still be full on the 29th. They don't really know, and neither do we really, right? We don't know when that special time is going to be, but I can tell you that if they say that full moon is on the 28th, you better take off work the day of the 28th and hunt all day and have fun. Just hunt your best spots, hunt the wind. Don't throw the wind away. But if you go hunt your spots and you've been waiting for him to show up in daylight and you've had the wind and you've had it, but he never showed up, either the 28th or the 27th, that big deer will show up. Now, because of the super full moon extravaganza cold front in October, you're going to be looking at, if I was to take off 3 days, if I was going to go on a hunt right now and I was from Ohio and I was coming to Illinois, or I was from North Carolina coming to Illinois or Iowa or whatever, and I had to hunt 3 days right now, 26th, There's a giant front coming in, but I'm going to guess if, depending on when that front's coming in, you're either going to get a super wind that's sucking to the east. That's not going to be good for you to hunt. I'd rather wait for that cold to get here and then have the deer on their feet. But you're looking at hunting the 26th, depending on the wind. Don't just go crash your best spots. And I'm talking about the 26th, 27th, and 28th this year. The 28th, you're going to have your full moon, your super full moon that I love to. It's not some blue moon. It doesn't matter about that. It just matters on the lunar part of the full moon. There's something about ghosts walking in the daylight, the daylight prior to that full moon, in that 8-hour span. Sometime during that day, your cameras are going to blow up. You're going to wish you were in a stand. You might not be at the perfect stand, but he's going to walk that day in daylight, and he's never walked in daylight yet. Or it could be the 27th. It just depends on where that little moon falls, but that's why I always say 48 hours. If I find a full moon in the deer hunting season and I want to shoot a 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old deer that I'm hunting that exists, it has to exist first. It has to be on your property or in and around that area. But he will walk in front of your cameras and he will check scrapes and he will be trying to find that first doe. For some reason, he gets jiggy, he gets wild, he gets crazy, and he gets on his feet and he'll go do deer stuff in front of your cameras and in your areas. He will be walking. You will see deer. You will see big deer dead on the side of the road. You will see big deer on all cameras. You will see giants hit the ground on the 26th, 27th, or 28th. But for me, my science is 27th and 28th. Craziness happens before that full moon on the 28th. And I just got a report from a farmer. Old Farmer Royce just told me, because I've been training him what to look for, and he's really good with conditions and being a farmer and when the freeze is and when the frost is. He's telling me that we're looking at snow in Illinois, at least northern part of Illinois, the 26th, 27th, 28th, somewhere around there. We're looking at snow, an accumulation of snow in those days right there. That's some incredible stuff, called the perfect storm, whatever you want. It's just the science that I found with these big mature animals being on their feet, mixing it with, like Mark Jury talks about, cold fronts, cold winds, consistent winds, cold winds in October, gets big, mature whitetails dead. So officially, go to your boss, get those 2 days off, at least get half the day off. Throw all the stuff. I don't hunt mornings in October. I will be in the woods in the morning and evening as long as I have the consistent wind. I'm still not going to throw it out the window. Make sure you have a consistent wind of 3 to 10 miles an hour blowing out of hopefully the west, because the front's going to suck into the system and then the system's going to blow out of a consistent direction. And you need that consistency. If it has an E in the report of what wind it's going to be, that means they don't know which way it's going to go. So be safe, stay far back, stay on a tree line, glass, do whatever you have to, move accordingly. If it has an E in the forecast, that means they don't know. That means it is going to swirl one way or another. It doesn't matter what you tell me. I know that that's the truth. If it has an E, it's unstable. It's bipolar. It needs its medication. You can do whatever you want, but on that E, that wind doesn't know what it's going to do. It's a stale front. They still could move, but you're not going to beat them. You're not going to beat the big boys. You can get lucky, but you're not going to beat them big boys. Okay, everybody. That's what I got for you on episode 2. I hope you enjoyed it. I don't make it through as many of these subjects on my phone that I want to, but that just means I might do another one this evening. I have a lot to tell you, but we're looking at the full moon. 27th, 28th, hunt morning, evening, all day, whatever you want to do. The 27th, 28th this year is going to be absolute fire because it's 48 hours before that full moon on the 28th. You mix that with a cold front, you got you a perfect storm of knocking down megas. Look for that other full moon. It's going to be in November, sometime around Thanksgiving. That's also going to be fire. Take those 2 days off too. Make sure you're in the woods. Start planning around this stuff, boys and girls. It's the only arrow I have in my quiver that I can say 85 plus of my giant whitetails have died 48 hours before that full moon, period. And no one can take that away from me. No one can take away that, my science, my luck, my whatever. I'm going to tell you, if you go back through last year's trail camera photos and you look when that full moon is, you'll freak out at how many big boys walked and you went, I can't believe it wasn't there. I want to thank Herman Brothers Realty, which I'm a licensed broker in Illinois. I help you buy and sell farms. I do consulting. I consult on your farm of how to get the best juice and the squeeze of whatever it is, trees, putting in a pond, native grasses, miscanthus, food plots, everything that you need to know. You can go to whitetaillandlife.com. We can book an online consult. I can do boots on the ground and come to your farm. Just message me. Give us a follow on Facebook at Chris Brackett's Land Life. Also, Chris Brackett Land Life on Instagram. And I'd love to hear from you. Please subscribe to this if you want to know more about deer and more about everything in the journey that we're on as men and women in the outdoors and just doing our thing. And this is a new season for me. I can't wait to share all this knowledge with you and talk about Big Chungus here and talk about, what that looks like. And at the end of the day, I just really enjoyed this new venue. And I'm going to keep talking. Hopefully you guys keep listening. It's a good outlet for me to get this information out there in the world. And then you're more than welcome in this free country that's still free, the US of A, to listen and to take this in. You're looking at Spotify, you're looking at YouTube, you're looking at Apple Podcasts. If you find somewhere else that I need to upload this to, let me know, but give us a follow, give us a share. We thank you very much for everything. Remember, Herman Brothers Realty, Herman Brothers Fishery. This show is brought to you right now by them. They're just helping me get it started. It's where I work, Herman Brothers Realty in Illinois. I'm a licensed broker. And then big shout out to Bordeaux Brothers out there in Vermont and Maine and New York. And we'll have more of this for you. Just a quick little goodbye here. So thank you. Chris Brackett signing out.